One narrow passage, two very different events. At the southern edge of Europe, Spain and North Africa nearly touch. At its narrowest point, the Strait of Gibraltar is only about 9 miles wide. For centuries, this small stretch of water has carried soldiers and merchants, refugees and conquerors, ideas and religions, hopes and fears. In the year 711, a Muslim commander named Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed from North Africa with an army commonly estimated at about 7,000 men. His victory over the Visigothic king Roderick opened the way for one of the most important conquests in European history. More than 13 centuries later, on July 30th and 31st, 2026, an estimated 50,000 to 60,000 people crossed from Morocco into Ceuta, a small Spanish territory on the coast of North Africa. The extraordinary scenes immediately produced comparisons with the Moorish conquest of Spain. But do these two events truly resemble one another? Or does the comparison tell us more about modern European fears than it does about history? Part 1. What happened in 711? Early 8th century Spain was ruled by the Visigoths, but the kingdom was divided. Rival nobles disputed who should occupy the throne, and Roderick's position was not completely secure. Across the water, the Umayyad Caliphate had expanded across North Africa. Tariq ibn Ziyad was a commander serving Musa ibn Nusayr, the Umayyad governor of North Africa. Tariq's force was composed mainly of recently Islamized North African Berbers, with some Arab leadership. They were organized soldiers operating within an expanding empire. After landing near the great rock that would take his name, Jabal Tariq, or Gibraltar, Tariq confronted Roderick's forces at the Battle of Guadalete in July 711. The exact size of both armies, and even the exact battlefield, remain disputed. What is not disputed is the result. Roderick was defeated and probably killed, while much of the Visigothic leadership was destroyed. The victory created an enormous political opening. Tariq advanced into the peninsula, and Musa followed in 712 with reinforcements. Cities surrendered or were captured. By approximately 715, Muslim authority extended across most of Iberia. Abd al-Aziz ibn Musa governed the new territory from Seville, and the land came to be known as Al-Andalus. This was not simply a large movement of people. It was a directed military campaign whose purpose and result were territorial rule. Part 2. What happened in Ceuta in 2026? Ceuta is part of Spain, but it is located on the African side of the Mediterranean, surrounded by Morocco. Together with Melilla, it forms one of the European Union's only land frontiers with Africa. That makes Ceuta both a Spanish city and a symbolic gateway to Europe. On July 30th and 31st, enormous crowds crossed the frontier by land and sea. Some climbed or pushed through barriers. Others attempted dangerous swims around the coastal breakwaters. By August 3rd, Spanish and local officials estimated that roughly 50,000 to 60,000 people had entered. At least 72 deaths had been reported, although the toll remained subject to change. Most of those who crossed did not remain. Tens of thousands returned to Morocco after encountering hunger, overcrowding, police controls, and no clear route to mainland Spain. Several thousand were still in Ceuta, including hundreds of unaccompanied minors requiring special protection. Why did it happen? There is no single proven explanation. Economic frustration was important. Many young Moroccans see Europe as offering opportunities they cannot find at home. Reports also describe social media messages claiming that migrants reaching Ceuta could avoid immediate deportation. Smuggling networks may have encouraged or exploited those rumors. There is also the question of Morocco's border enforcement. Moroccan officials blamed misinformation and traffickers. Spanish intelligence reportedly did not conclude that Morocco organized the movement, but believed Moroccan authorities allowed controls to lapse. Some Spanish leaders accused Morocco of using migration as political pressure. That remains disputed and should not be presented as established fact. Part 3. The similarities. There are genuine similarities beginning with geography. Both events involved movement from North Africa towards Spanish-controlled territory near the Strait of Gibraltar. Both also occurred at moments when a barrier appeared weaker than expected. In 711, division within the Visigothic kingdom helped a small but organized army achieve an extraordinary victory. In 2026, rumors, mass coordination, and a failure of border control allowed a civilian crowd to overwhelm the frontier. Numbers also created a dramatic contrast. Tariq's initial force may have numbered only about 7,000. The modern crossing involved perhaps 8 times as many people. Yet numbers alone do not determine whether an event is an invasion. Organization, weapons, leadership, and purpose matter much more. Finally, both events produced fear. In 711, the fear was justified by advancing armies and collapsing political authority. In 2026, the images of thousands crossing at once generated public concern about whether Spain and the European Union could control their borders. Part 4. The differences that matter most. The differences are decisive. Tariq's men were soldiers. The people entering Ceuta were civilians. Tariq had a command structure, military objectives, and reinforcements from an imperial governor. The modern migrants had no single leader, no army, and no plan to seize Spanish institutions or territory. The army of 711 defeated the recognized ruler of the Visigothic kingdom and established a new political order that lasted in different forms for centuries. In 2026, Spanish sovereignty remained intact. Most migrants returned within days, and Spanish police and military forces restored control of the frontier. The term Moor also requires care. Medieval Europeans used it broadly for Muslim peoples associated with North Africa and Al-Andalus. It was never a precise modern nationality. Today's Moroccans cannot simply be treated as the same collective people with the same intentions as an 8th century Umayyad army. Calling the modern event an invasion may express the shock of seeing the border overrun, but taken literally, it creates a false historical equivalence. Part 5. What happens next? In the short term, Spain will almost certainly strengthen Ceuta's defenses. A new maritime containment barrier has already been installed. More surveillance, police cooperation, faster warning systems, and emergency reception planning are likely. The crisis will also intensify political arguments. Parties favoring stricter immigration controls will cite Ceuta as evidence that European borders are vulnerable. Humanitarian organizations will emphasize the deaths, the stranded children, and the shortage of safe, legal routes for people seeking work or asylum. The European Union may provide Morocco with additional money, equipment, and diplomatic support to prevent another mass crossing. This could reduce migration in the short term, but it creates a long-term difficulty. The more Europe depends on Morocco to control the border, the more political leverage Morocco may possess. The most important long-term effect is therefore unlikely to be territorial conquest. It will be political. Repeated crises could produce tougher asylum rules, faster deportations, and greater support for nationalist or anti-immigration parties. They could also strain relations among European countries over who must receive migrants and pay for their care. Another possibility is that this remains an exceptional event. caused by a unique mixture of rumor, economic desperation, and temporarily weakened enforcement. Much will depend on whether Spain and Morocco rebuild reliable cooperation, and whether young people in Morocco believe they have a future at home. Conclusion: does history repeat itself? The conquest of 711 and the Ceuta crisis of 2026 occurred along the same ancient passage between Africa and Europe. That geographical resemblance is powerful, and it explains why the comparison comes so easily. But history must be compared carefully. One event was a military campaign against a divided kingdom. The other was a chaotic and tragic migration surge by civilians hoping to enter Europe. One created a new state. The other created a border, a political and humanitarian emergency. History does not repeat itself exactly. Geography repeats itself. Human ambition repeats itself. Political weakness, economic desperation, and fear repeat themselves. The lesson of Ceuta is not that the conquest of Spain has begun again. The lesson is that borders remain fragile when hope, misinformation, and political pressure bring thousands of people to the same place at the same moment. More than 13 centuries after Tariq crossed the strait, the narrow passage between Africa and Europe continues to shape history, but not always in the same way.